Hello, and welcome back to the FEZ show. It is the 12th of June 2020. So today is the global release of And We Go Green. So you can check out the Formula E website to see where you can watch it. We have quite a bit to discuss today concerning how Formula E is going to be restarted and its future. What is it going to do in the future regarding battery development? With me today is Edward Hunter and Jack Pickering. Morning, boys.
Good morning.
Hey, it's good to be back, guys.
It is good to be back. One thing to discuss in terms of other news, which you two don't actually quite know yet, is that I entered my first ever Formula E sim race yesterday.
Oh, actually, I saw the Remco stream of this afterwards.
Yeah, I was in the same race as sim racer Remco Major, who was in the Race at Home Challenge. My first ever league race. I've never ever done one before in my life. Thank you, Jack, with your little round of applause. But I didn't do too well. To be fair, I finished 12th out of 17 runners, but that was technically last because they all crashed out. But I take that. What I've got to learn, energy management, so hard. Oh, so hard, energy management. We were racing around Rome. So yeah, that was a challenge. But what I want to talk to you about though today is batteries. Because as I said in the intro, Jack, And We Go Green, we've done our own review of it, which you can go back and have a listen to on one of the shows. But it's released globally today, so everyone in the world gets a chance to watch it today wherever they are. And one thing that Agag really goes on about in that film is battery technology. So, and how important it is and how people still have range anxiety. So, with that, obviously we've got McLaren who produces a battery. But what I'm thinking is, do we need to have two people, like two companies, potentially, creating the battery to really extend sort of, the battery technology and really make a run for it? Because I feel like where we are in the world right now, electric mobility needs to accelerate. And I think by having two people create a battery, that would really accelerate battery technology and therefore electric mobility at the same time.
Yes, definitely. Yes, we have touched on this before, but I do feel that the time is coming. I feel like the pandemic has kind of put it on pause for a little bit longer, so we're not going to see it for another couple more years. But I think it will be I think that's the direction that Formula E wants to go in, to have batteries done by have a competitive field of batteries, so these manufacturers that we do have in the sport can push the limits of their batteries further forward and be ready for the 2035 or 2040 when we go all electric into.
Like, the problem with this idea though, Ed, is cost, right? Because let's face it, Formula E are always trying to make sure that the series is sustainable, right? And they're making good progress. They've made really good progress with battery. It states in the film, and it's obvious, right? To go from having two cars, needing a car swap to do 45 minutes race, so basically doing 25 minutes with one battery, to now do 45 minutes with the other battery is, brilliant. Okay, it's a great achievement. But that technology still isn't really feeding through into electric road cars fast enough. So potentially, yes, it might be a bit expensive to potentially do this, and it will drum up cost, but the payoff might be great.
Could be, yeah. So I guess there's the cost thing, which you just mentioned quite rightly, is a concern. But also, I think in terms of entertainment, how it's going to impact the final product. Would having longer races, if they're like, say, instead of 45 minutes plus one lap, it's an hour plus a lap, would that necessarily make for better races or just longer ones? I think having longer races means we get more racing, obviously. So from that point of view, from fans' value for money, obviously we go there. All the sessions are in one day, so they get to see a fair bit of action. But having a longer, I think overall having a longer race would probably be better. But I think in terms of TV schedules, in terms of cramming a lot of action in there, I think maybe it would. There's a sense that it could be a lot of effort for maybe a minimal impact in terms of the final product is a concern that I have, maybe.
Yeah, but as I said, Jack, the cost of it will be high, but as I said, the payoff I think will be really good. But obviously, Formula E, it's not, the battery's quite chunky thing, right? It's a really chunky thing that's at the back of the car, and they want it in even, yeah. And Agag said even in the film, right, that to McLaren, like, okay, we want this smaller and able to do more power. So, there are, Formula E are putting a lot of permutations on, these battery manufacturers to actually like produce a product.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think. I think as time goes on, they will work towards a smaller battery. Everything gets smaller year on year. Basically anything technology wise, I think.
Well, look at mobile phones,
And
for example.
yes, mobile phones used to be quite big. I've compared like some of my old phones before because I used to have a track record at losing all of my phones. But yeah, but yeah, no. If everything gets smaller, then I think all the car manufacturers can work towards that, and it will just get smaller year on year. And so yeah, I think it is definitely feasible.
Because obviously, Formula E going to be Formula E, right? They're like this big dog in a sense, which we're barking orders at companies, right? We want this. We want it this size, and when we want it ready by X, right? And fine, they want to do that because obviously they want a product, they want to showcase Ed that they are moving forward. But if we do have, and I do believe, obviously by opening the tender to more than one person, so obviously McLaren, even if it was McLaren and Williams again, Williams did the the first 4 seasons of the battery development. So they're two companies that could go with it basically for battery technology. But I don't know how it would be implemented, and I suppose that's the challenging thing because race teams, right? They're not going to settle if Williams, for example, come back in but produce a rubbish battery compared to McLaren. No one wants to buy the Williams one.
Yeah, that is a problem. And the other problem, of course, for Williams is that they've sold off the advanced engineering firm that made the Gen 1 batteries. So I'm not sure exactly if they've still got the same manufacturing capability as they did several years ago. But yeah, one thing we haven't really talked about in terms of Gen 3, I think De Grassi may have mentioned this a little bit, that he had this very ambitious vision for Gen 3 that involved wireless charging. And it was something that was talked about for a while, especially in the early seasons when the safety car basically, I'm not sure if they still do it, if the company that did it is still involved, but they would have a little charging pad. The safety car would stay in the pit lane and it would charge up there in between sort of whenever it was needed for sessions or whatever.
I have a feeling, I don't know if that's already been implemented. I have, there was something, especially with the safety car, that they were challenging and looking at for years, and wireless charging pads, Jack, is something a gag has mentioned on countless occasions, especially at the beginning of Formula E, like in season 1, season 2. Like, how a gag is sometimes. He'll have these wild ambitions, like, we could do a 24-hour race. We just put all these wireless charging pads.
Yeah, let's just dig up the streets. Yeah,
and we go on forever. We can do a 24-hour race, which is effectively true if they were to do it via these wireless charging pads, which is a good thing. But as Ed said, Jack, you would have to obviously dig up the roads, put the wireless charging pads in, and then repave them, which might take time, and could be inconvenient to city tracks.
Yes, that is. Yeah, that would be a major inconvenience, I feel. Because we race on city circuits and cities need to be used all the time. I mean, admittedly, the amount of construction that there is in London at any one time is frankly amazing. But yeah, I still think that's a bit. I don't want to say that it's not feasible, because I think it is, but I think just the way it might be done would be different to how we've all kind of perceived it over the years. They might have some like wireless charging points from the walls, or like drive through a section where down the walls or something like that. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. My mouth is moving, and
For me though, honestly, like, I see that happening in the future, wireless charging pads, but I don't see them happening in the city centres, to be honest with you, because there you're just popping around and then you could probably pop home in time to recharge, right? I reckon in the future we could see wireless charging pads. You'd have to rip up the motorways, but for long journeys on motorway drives, right? You could potentially, put them on there. So when you are driving in your electric car, you go on a motorway, you actually don't lose any charge, or you recuperate charge from going from London to Edinburgh, or Nice to Paris, or Munich to Berlin, for example, Texas to New York. Imagine.
Jack, I just wanted to say that you've missed the obvious one, which is from Paris to Berlin.
Paris to Berlin. I was just trying to get as many sort of cities. I know, try and not make this as much, of a United Kingdom reference point as possible. But you could see that potentially, right? Because they're just long roads. Obviously, you'd have to repave bits at a time. But then, rather than stopping for fuel, you're just driving. Whereas in the city stuff, you don't really need wireless charging points. I suppose that's a topic for another day. But we've mentioned Gen 3 now. So I want to talk Gen 3 because Gen 3 is supposed to be coming 2022. Whether or not that gets delayed, we'll find out next month if that does get delayed. But obviously, we moved from Gen 1, okay, which was the car swap, 45-minute race. We go to Gen 2, 45-minute race, up the power, and one car. So, boom, big progress. And, Agag talks about, this season, this battery technology needs to improve. Then surely when we move to Gen 3, we're going to have to improve the battery again, because we can't look like that we're stagnant. Now, I think Formula E are looking for a trade-off here personally, Ed. The trade-off is, do we still race at 45 minutes, but we run at 350 kilowatts? Or do we increase the power so the cars are faster? But you still have to do energy saving, because you're not running at 200 anymore during the race. You're running at 250, for example. You're running at what the qualifying power is now. So the cars are lapping faster, right? Or do they improve the battery, which, you keep at the same 250, maybe you up it to 270 or something like that for qualifying pace, make the race pace the attack mode of 235, and then race something else, whatever, right? Race pace, 235, and maybe, attack mode 250, for example. But because of that, you extend the race as an hour, so that proves that the battery has moved forward, because it's visual. You can see, we were racing for 45 minutes with two cars, then we were racing for 45 minutes for one car, now we're racing for an hour for one car. So it's very easy for people to see that we've moved forward. Whereas if you just up the power, I feel that's harder for people to see that we have actually moved forward.
Yeah, I think there's probably a dilemma. I think Formula E, from their point of view, they don't really want to delay Gen 3, because we talked before about them having to basically push back the Gen 2 Evo for cost reasons. And so maybe there's a sense that they don't want to push back more than they have to. The decision may end up being taken out of the hands of the FIA intervenes, but yeah, in terms of the two approaches that you mentioned there, I think improving the battery very much depends on McLaren Automotive improving the battery in terms of how future-proof is their design, basically, and like how much. I'm not sure. I'm not a big expert in sort of battery cell technology, whether they can just alter the existing battery or they have to build a completely new one. But yeah, if it's just a case of just putting more AAAs in there, I don't know.
I suppose, what do you think, Jack? Obviously, what would you prefer? Like, would you prefer to see the car just potentially just go faster, still race at 45 minutes, but you were seeing faster lap times, the cars are more on the limit? Or would you prefer to see, what Formula E could potentially is about, increasing that battery time, having it at an hour race? We get a longer race, which, Ed sort of said, that might not mean we get a better race, which is true, but we get more of it, but it proves that the battery and the range of these things are increasing.
Well, I'm a racing fan first and foremost, so I think personally I'd rather see a can stick with the same 45-minute format and see them do faster lap times, because there are still people out there who say, oh, they don't go that fast, they don't make that much noise, and so for them to do some fantastic lap times around circuits and stuff, I think we need to prove the doubters wrong. I think that's one thing that needs to be done. But honestly, I'd quite like to see Well, I think what will happen is there will be some kind of middle ground. So I reckon maybe for Gen 3 we might revert back to the laps thing, because when it changed to time, I know that it did get quite a bit of backlash from it. So maybe convert back to laps, and so it will become a 50 minute rate, 55 minute race or something, and then also but then also it still brings a bit more of that energy saving element to it.
Yeah, because that's the problem with Paris, for example, right? So drivers say, right, we do a 45-minute race in Paris, right? With these batteries, that is easy. We don't even really need to energy save, right? We can just race around Paris 45 minutes pretty much flat out, right? Because we don't have to do much energy saving. Whereas when we go to Marrakesh, they're struggling to get to the end on 45 minutes with the battery. So, that could be a really good thing to do in terms of, reverting to a lap system in terms of, well, make Paris a 50-minute race or a 55-minute race. So, yes, they're going to have to save energy because, the track's too small. It's a bit like Monaco, right? It's a slow average speed lap, Monaco, the normal Grand Prix circuit I'm talking about. But that race is an hour and 14 minutes long because it's 78 laps. It's a small thing. The fuel can last much longer at that track compared to somewhere like Monza. Okay, so where that's 53 laps and that race is over in an hour and 15 minutes. So it's very similar to the fuel battery, fuel tank in that sense to the battery. So if you go back to a lap system, then yeah, you can allow to have certain races which aren't as heavy on energy management, Ed, which would then be longer races.
Yeah, I kind of like the energy management there. And you mentioned Marrakesh, because of all the long straights at Marrakesh, it's one of the longer tracks on the calendar. That always seems to lead to really good races because in the closing stages, energy management is so critical. Everyone starts attacking each other for positions, whereas other tracks, like you say, Paris, Monaco, you may have similar sort of energy management issue, but the circuits are too tight to overtake, whereas you don't have the same issue at Marrakesh. So yeah, I kind of like the energy management aspect of it. So I sort of feel completely different. And I know Pico mentioned earlier that we have to make the cars faster to please the doubters. I feel like even if we did that, the doubters would find they still wouldn't like the noise. They wouldn't like the presentation. They wouldn't like the music in the back. There'd always be something. So I think you're never going to please the doubters. So, sod them. Is my opinion.
So what I thought, right, is what Formula E's like. This is Formula E's problem right now. Well, it's not a problem. It's just what direction do they want to go in? Okay, to sort of wrap up this topic, do they want... I don't think they probably will go past 1 hour races, right? So if we hit 1 hour early... Yeah, I don't think they'll do a Formula 1 and do an hour and a half. I don't think that's their intention, honest to God. Especially with the one-day format. I don't think we're going to do practice qualifying, then an hour and a half race. I think an hour will probably be the maximum. So if we hit an hour straight away with Gen 3, great, we've hit it. But therefore, so we've hit the hour range, therefore we can build the speed for that battery, for example. Or they keep it at that 45-minute sort of race, increase the power so the car's getting faster, and then when we move to the next gen, you sort of keep that speed and maybe move forward. So, it is that gradual, and then by the 15th season, the 20th season of Formula E, we've got that hour race, and maybe we're running at 500 kilowatts during a race, which is super, super quick, but we've got the battery technology now to potentially do it, Jack.
Yes, definitely. And one thing that makes me want to switch back from the 45-minute format to a lap system is I might find doing the race reports a little bit easier because I'm having to work out okay, what minute of that is the race instead of just like that, like that lap. So yeah, I feel like it would be easier for fans to follow it as well. I think in terms of like the battery developing, I think that there will be some that they'll change some things for they'll change quite a lot of things for Gen 3. I'm fairly certain, but I'm sure most of it will stay the same, and there'll still be the same ethos of Formula E, so it's okay.
Yeah, we've put in an interview request for Alejandro Agag to sort of discuss this, because this is sort of the things that came from the film that we were like, we need to talk to him. So hopefully we can get that sorted over the next couple of weeks and get a chance to speak to him. and find out, because these will be the questions that we'll be posing him. Because at the end of the day, him and Jamie Regal are the ones deciding the future of the direction of how the series goes. And I suppose with the current climate that we've seen, Ed, that things have to change, and maybe electric mobility needs to be accelerated at this time. And the only way to accelerate it at this time is potentially raising the cost of battery development, so we can get over these range anxieties, as they say in the film, quicker.
Yeah, I suppose that's the point of view of looking at Formula E rather than purely as just entertainment. You see it as also it's a laboratory for all these manufacturers, DS, Mercedes, Jaguar, etc., to show off what they can do in terms of how efficient their powertrains are and such. That sort of, and we know from Jaguar, especially, and a couple other companies, that it feeds into the road cars they make. So yeah, Formula E's got that crossroads. Are they going to focus on entertainment and keeping the costs down, or are they going to focus on road relevancy in terms of making a difference on the world in terms of social impact? But that might bring the costs up. We'll have to see.
Exactly. And obviously with, just to end this topic now, it's just, people are going back to work around the world, not just in the UK, around the world people are going back to work, but people are being told to avoid public transport because you'll have a more chance of potentially catching COVID-19. The risk is much higher on public transport than it is sitting in your own car. And with the majority of the world's cars being either diesel or petrol, pollution's going up. And that's what, the news is already saying. Pollution's going up, more cars are on the road. Therefore, that's why I feel this topic is so important to discuss, because there's nothing for electric mobility at the moment. You can't just, we wanted to save the world, technically, I say that, but, you want to save the planet, make the planet healthier, and everyone's been really happy with the air pollution dramatically going down, and potentially this could make it skyrocket. And because electric vehicles weren't ready to fill the gap yet, we'll have to bring it down even further in the future. So therefore, I feel, and I think we all feel, that something needs to be done fairly soon. But let's move on now to how we're going to finish this season, because so much has been talked about. We've talked about going to Valencia, Jack. We've talked about going to Portimao. We've talked about every racetrack under the sun, about returning and how we could do this. But it looks like all of that's being scrapped, basically. Valencia doesn't seem like it's being talked about much. Portimao either. Asan came in the other day saying, look, we'd host one. But I don't think that's the direction Formula E want to go in. They seem very set on having 6 races at Berlin with different track layouts, okay? And over a period of a week, potentially, in August, which will include midweek races, which I find really interesting because, great. Jam-packed, one weekend doubleheader Saturday, Sunday. Then you might go Tuesday, Wednesday, another doubleheader technically midweek, and then Saturday, Sunday again in Berlin. 6 races done in 1 week. We move on potentially to Seoul, that they want to move on to finish the season in another doubleheader, which we'll talk about the feasibility of that. But what do you think of midweek races? I only say this because, people going back to work. So do we do 2 midweek races, right? Who's going to watch these races? I know there's still people at home that could potentially watch the races, but with more and more people going to work, then, you're already potentially losing people watching the race, which, I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, no, I'm not huge on the idea of midweek races. If I know that they're aiming for it in the evenings, like when people have finished work, but even then, I mean, it's still going to be a bit problematic because you will still have people are still going to be at work during qualifying, and yet admittedly, I mean, like today was supposed to be the first day of the Euros of the Euro 2020. So, and that is always fantastic when the European Championships comes around, because no one's really doing any work in the afternoons. They're just sitting on BBC Sport watching. I don't know. Iceland versus England was tragic for us 4 years ago. No, but yeah, I'm not so sure about the idea of midweek races. I'm not completely sold on the idea of 6 races at Berlin. I think the whole do different tracks covers the whole 2-round thing that needs to be covered, which is why I mean, way back over 30 episodes in like one of the first things I ever said was Berlin Valencia round out the season, bosh. And then, but but yeah, who knows? I think it's still possible that they. I'm not hugely sold on having the 6 races in Berlin, and especially if they're midweek as well. I'm not sure how quickly they want to turn around the track layout designs. I'm not sure how hard that would be, but yeah, I think. But yeah, I'm not 100% sold on that idea. And then speaking of soul, I don't. I'm not sure if that's the best idea right now, because, I mean, like MotoGP released their calendar, but they've said like we're not gonna we're gonna stay in Europe for until basically November, and then if we can go out to outside Europe, then we will go to a Thailand or in Malaysia or in Argentina. I don't think Austin's going to happen, but no, I think I'm not 100% sold on the idea of going to Seoul. I just don't think it will work out, and then you have to factor in the whole. Is it okay to go to cities?
Yeah, and then obviously, like Formula One have released that Japan, Singapore, they're not going to be on the calendar this season from Formula One. So, going to South Korea, it seems just a bit risky. Yes, things are getting better there, but things in Europe still aren't potentially great. And if we just mingle in Europe in our own bubbles, then I think we'd be fine. But flying around the world might be a bit more difficult.
Yeah, I think going back to, I sort of agree about Seoul that it'd be a bit difficult to fit that in, to be honest, in terms of, like you say, because of the pandemic. I was thinking about the midweek thing, and I actually don't think it's that bad of an idea. I'm probably going to be in the minority here, but among us three saying that. But I actually thought they should have done this with Race at Home as well, because there were so many esports events at the weekends. I think we're going to have a similar issue when the real racing starts up again, especially throughout August. That it's going to be so jam-packed racing action at the weekend that you actually might be better off doing it during the week. And I felt like that was what I felt Race at Home should have done as well, in terms of, I felt like that was one of the reasons why it didn't quite get the viewing figures that maybe it could have. I mean, obviously, people still working during the week, but yeah, and it's interesting now as well, as being Race at Home, that W Series has started their series, and it's basically been given all the same slots and coverage that Formula E had. But yeah, anyway, that's not really that relevant to the question. Yeah, I think midweek actually, it may not be, the most attractive idea, but I think in the current circumstances, it's probably a necessary kind of evil in order to get the races in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that the Race Home Challenge should have been held during midweek, because on the weekends it just seemed to be a bit of a mess, because there was so many other things on that yeah, there just wasn't really that much promotion around the Race Home Challenge, and it just didn't really grow to a point where Formula E was. Had it been on a Tuesday evening or something, I reckon that it would have been a little bit better than what it turned out to be. But yeah, no, I think it's different for real races though. Yeah, I think having real races midweek feels a lot worse than having like a sim race midweek instead.
Yeah, I'd agree, because obviously it's a real race, right? Everyone wants to see it, right? It's the same situation, Jack, that we had with Saudi Arabia when the race was on a Friday. Now, yes, that is the Saudi Arabian weekend, okay, but for the rest of the world, everyone's at work. 12 o'clock is like lunchtime. The race was on, right? So people would. I remember scrambling around to make sure that I was able to watch the race, with other commitments that I have, and just to make sure that we're on top of it, because at least with a weekend, okay, look, we can focus solely on motorsport. But if you put it midweek, there's so many different factors, so many different things happening that the general public person, for example, who would be working, misses 2 races through no fault of their own.
Yeah, I guess my perspective is that I don't currently work during the week, So apart from editing this podcast, of course, but
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's probably why I'm not certain. They don't have such a big hang up with midweek races.
I just find it interesting that this idea that Portimao, the Valencia jacket they were really widely speculated, widely talked, and even Agag said himself in interviews said we are talking to these racetracks. It's just I find it really interesting that it just seems to have failed.
Yeah, no, Valencia seems like a no-brainer because that's where the cars are. That's where pre-season testing happens now. So yeah, everything would kind of point at Valencia, and the thing is, Valencia is still basically a city. Yes, it's not the Formula One track that used to be there, but still, I think, you could have still called it the Valencia E-Prix, and it still would have been fine. And so yeah, I just don't know why they didn't choose that in the end. But oh well.
Yes, but we'll find out very soon, actually, everybody, because on the 19th of June, we are expecting the calendar.
1 week today.
1 week today, we're expecting the calendar to be announced, to be ratified. So everything has to go to the FIA World Motorsport Council, be ratified in what they want to do. So they don't have long. They probably already know what they want to do, and maybe Valencia and Portimao might find a sneaky place on the calendar. Who knows? But it's looking unlikely. But so what we're expecting is probably 6 races at Berlin, and if we are, with probably a massive asterisk on it, would be South Korea as a season finale. But boys, that's pretty much it to wrap up the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
No worries, Ben.
Remember, just some housekeeping. So, Discord link. We might be doing the Discord race on the weekend. So, if you have R Factor 2 and you want to join in a Formula E race, hit that Discord link. Come join so you can come and join the server. Also, make sure you like and subscribe because that helps us out massively. We also have a Patreon page. If you love us that much, you can help us out. Only $1 or $2, but basically help us, produce a better content, potentially, I should say. But thank you so much for watching. You have been watching the FEZ show. We'll be back next week to discuss more crazy Formula E news. So we will see you then. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.